And tell everybody about the process of compiling these images, that you didn't actually paint these groupings together.
No.
You painted the heads separate, the hands separate, the bodies
Right.
in many cases separate. So share with us.
Well,
the process.
the whole thing was being done on the fly. When I didn't know when I began how many figures I was going to have to do, and it ended up being 135 figures, which I had to do in 20 months. And my original idea was to do a full-out painting, completely rendered head to foot, life-size, of each figure. But the time it takes to make a picture like that, I just didn't have enough days, enough weeks of time. I had to do an average of 2 figures a week for 20 months, in addition to figuring out all the weaving problems. So so I had to figure out a shorthand way to do it. And so I got the idea of doing it piecemeal. So I did all the head, the central idea in the image is that the heads and hands, the portrait elements of the figures are very vivid and very clearly rendered and realistic, so that the people who are in the church look on the wall and see something that they can feel a very immediate connection to. So I wanted that element to be very, very strongly rendered. Then the other idea is that I was trying to make a connection between the history of the Roman Church, in this case it's Catholic Church, which has a long history of art, and at the same time the church is being done in a very super modern way by this architect Raphael Moneo, and Cardinal Mahony's vision was to have a cathedral for the 21st century. So I was trying to find a graphic language that acknowledged that historical tradition and at the same time utilizes very modern technology. And so I wanted to make reference to these fresco textures, these famous surfaces that you see in all the old Italian churches that I had seen when I was a graduate student, and make the weaving suggest that. So at the end, it became a composited process where you had pieces of oil painting over here of portraits, texture samples that were gathered from all kinds of sources, little drawings of drapery that were this big, and all these separate elements then come together in the computer and are composited, rescaled, and composed. And that's how it was done.
And you actually modemed the files over to Belgium, or?
Right. What I wanted to do was to make an image file that I could literally send directly to the loom, the way you'd send an image to your printer. And that's what we did. So once we figured out all this technological, all these issues, we developed a technique where I could finally get a file, and I would literally email it to Belgium, and they would get the file and not alter it. They would send it directly to the loom. And it would start cranking this thing out.
Had that been done before?
Well, it eventually gets done always. I mean, the image has to get to the loom. But conventionally, it's done in-house. And the way we did it, no. The way we did it was, they had never worked that way before. And they doubted, in fact, when we first met these guys, they thought we were out of our minds and that we could never do it. They were very surprised that what we sent them actually looked like something when they first wove it.
And tell us, where exactly were they woven?
They're woven in Belgium in a little village called Wielsbeke, which is outside of Bruges. And it's a very famous area for weaving going back to the Middle Ages. And they have a lot of tradition there. And they were wonderful people. It's a very small mill, has like 3 big, but they have the biggest loom made. This loom is a Dornier. It's a German loom. It's the biggest electronic jacquard loom currently being made. And which we needed because of the scale of the church. We needed something. These can weave an image 7 feet wide. So they had very advanced technology, but they work in this little village, and they take a great deal of care with what they're doing, and they were willing to put up with a lot of experimentation and a lot of testing that we gave them. So they were really great to work with.
What are the dimensions exactly?
They vary according to where they are in the building. The tallest ones will be about 40 feet tall, and the smallest ones are 14 feet tall. Most of them, the average height is around 20 feet tall.
By 7 feet wide?
By 7 feet wide, yeah.
Now there was a couple of other untraditional aspects of the tapestries in that the subject matter is very unusual, although they're saints.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to make something that people would look at them and think, these were real people, and I know somebody who looks just like that, and isn't that so-and-so kind of thing. The other thing was that the Archdiocese of Los Angeles is extremely diverse ethnically, and we wanted to represent every group possible. There's, I think, 42 different languages that are spoken in the Archdiocese. So the Community of Saints is actually a very old theme. The earliest churches have them. If you go back to Ravenna and Rimini and you see these 10th century churches that have mosaics, they have a frieze of figures, usually all the men on one side and all women on the other side. But this idea of having the saints echo the assembly of people in the church is an old idea. But to my knowledge, there's not been one done like this. For the number of identified saints, we have 123, I think, identified saints, and that's very unusual. And then to have them be from all these different ethnicities and all these different periods in history. So in that sense, it's a unique version of this theme.